Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman.
What's up, Tyler Gould?
It was a good night, man. We just we're about ready to open the doors to our listeners to listen to our time that we had with Wes Franks. I mean, it was fun. Wes is a great guy. He talks about a lot of different things. This idea of focus and presence and being, where you need to be and doing the right things is big with Wes. I loved it. Wes is a longtime friend of yours. What made you think Wes would be good for the richest men in town? And tell me what stood out to you tonight.
So, we have folks that we come across, and I think that when we're hosting podcasts called Richest Men in Town, you and I are walking around with eyes to see, right? We're looking around eyes to see who's walking that walk, right? Who is doing those things in small, significant ways. And Wes Franks is a magnifier. Wes Franks, when given a responsibility, Wes Franks, when you need to count on someone to do the right thing, to be there, to say the right thing, to minister, to support, Wes Franks is always that guy. And I admire that. I admire the time that he gave us tonight and the vulnerability. We talk about that all the time, right? You're going to be my friend. You're going to let some walls down. And Wes Franks, who you've met,
yeah,
right, a decade ago, leaves this show saying, "Love you guys."
Yeah.
And I love Wes Franks more now that I can see what goes into making Wes Franks the man that he is, right? The husband, the father, the sales rep. He lets us in on a lot of things, and some of them are challenging seasons in his life. But I love the idea of well, Mike, why wouldn't I hang on to my faith when I'm going through trials?
Yeah.
That's the thing I gotta do.
Yeah.
Right. When everything's failing around me, I gotta be faithful so that I can be worthy of receiving revelation and receiving the blessings God's got in store for me. Wes Franks killed it.
Yeah, he did. I really thought he taught some great lessons about faith. He taught some great lessons about relationships,
sacrifice.
He talks about his, watching his children grow up and go out of the house and start their own relationships and how he's, falling in love more every day with his wife. And I just thought it was there were some beautiful sentiments in there. There were some great lessons taught, and man, I enjoyed every minute. I really am grateful for the opportunity that we have to spend with these people every Thursday night. I mean, what a treat. What a treat for us. What a gift that he's given for us to do something with. The things that he talked about, just losing ourselves. And that when we stop thinking of self, how much clearer we're able to see the contributions and the blessings that other people can be in our life. I mean, that was powerful. We break down the cereal debate, right? And Oreos.
We're talking about all kinds of things. I gotta go. I have homework tonight. My homework from the richest men in town is to go eat some Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah, and then when you're done with that, have an Oreo dipped in milk. I mean,
it's a good night, man. It's a good night.
Breakfast and dessert right there, man.
What's something that you're taking, that you're thinking about, or maybe putting into an action item?
Yeah, I thought I loved the discussion that we had about, how do we balance our everyday responsibilities with the desire that we have
love that
grow?
Discussion.
Right. I thought that was a really powerful discussion. I loved your comments during that and just the give and take there. And I really did love, when he talks about developing my love for my wife even more. I just thought that's a powerful thought, that we need to be thinking about that, and he's been married 29 years. I'm coming up on
got a couple on you.
Yeah, he's got 4 or 5 on me, and I think it's an important lesson to learn. So I'm just grateful that Wes showed up the way that he did. And when he talks about selling his car, to me that rang true for me. I mean, I don't have a car. I'd like one of those cars. I don't have one, but I really
hope our listeners let that settle kind of deep into their minds, because that's on the surface.
Yeah,
right. On the surface, that's a cool story.
Yeah.
But if you think about it and you actually apply those principles to your life, the principles that Wes teaches as he shares that story, you're going to see some application.
Yeah,
you're going to see, absolutely. And you will probably even receive some counsel to take, and it's yours to take. And I think I love that the conversation that we had about, sometimes we receive things and put it up on the shelf. Well, I'm thinking about what's on that shelf and what needs to come down off that shelf and actually put into action.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciated his sentiment about keeping that prayer in your heart as you go through your day.
Yeah.
Spirit of prayer.
Absolutely. I think that people are going to be better off for spending 2 hours with Wes Franks. I mean, he was fantastic. And I look forward to,
and what are we chasing? Right.
Yeah.
What are we chasing? We chasing trying to beat other people? We trying to beat our neighbor and get more?
Yeah.
Are we chasing our former self, our best self?
Yeah. Well, it was fun tonight, Mike. I appreciate you bringing Wes Franks onto the show. I look forward to introducing him to our listeners. Let's be intentional about it. And look, can we say Merry Christmas to everybody, because we're almost there, right? This will be there. It's going to be there before we know it. And I hope Wes is a good reminder of kindness, compassion, and mercy. And let's make sure that we're being intentional about that and showing that to others.
Yeah. Can I throw something out there too?
Yeah, please.
With the story of George Bailey on our minds as we come through this Christmas season, I would just invite our listeners to look around, right? Look around their lives, because that's all we're doing, Tyler.
Yeah.
We're looking around and we're seeing great people, and some people have always been there. And as we're going into this, we're having the opportunity to look around, and there are amazing people all around us.
I agree.
And I would just throw this out there to the folks that do listen. Thank you for listening. To the folks that have talked or shared Richest Men in Town podcast, like we have, I've prescribed it at times.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I would just say, if you've got great folks, shoot us a line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Let us know. Give us a little background. Give us some contact information, and we'll take it from there. But I think that as people listen, I hope that, number one, they're applying the things that our friends are sharing. But I really hope it opens up their eyes to some of the great people that are around. And I would just pose that question: if I was Mike Freeman, if I was Tyler Gould, who would I have on the show?
Yeah.
And you'll immediately, some folks will come to mind.
Absolutely,
line, man. I would
love
to
line. Some absolutely. We don't have the corner on the market of all the richest men,
and
right?
We're booking, right? 2021's coming. We're excited about the guests that we've got lined up. If you've got some richest men in your neighborhood, then join them to the town.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Merry Christmas to you, Mike.
Merry Christmas, Tyler Gould.
Going to be here before we know it, but look, let's enjoy this time with Wes Franks. To our listeners, please, if you have a moment, we'd love to hear your feedback about the show. If you can give us we don't talk about this much, but if you give us a rating or a review on Apple iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, we'd appreciate it.
And Tyler too, this is interesting because Wes did the work tonight.
Yeah.
But honestly, we're going to receive the paycheck. Not that we get paid for this, but we're going to receive the people reaching out to us, texting, calling, emailing, saying, oh man.
Yeah.
When he said that thing, that really made me think about some changes I need to make. And we try to share those with Wes, but really that's going to fill our hearts. And thank you for those that do reach out to let us know how this show has impacted you, because it really does, light our fire to keep this thing going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Merry Christmas to everybody that's listening. Enjoy your time with Wes Franks tonight on The Richest Men in Town.
Hey, so long story short, rough day, right?
Yeah.
2 dead cars this morning. Answer me this question, Tyler Gould.
Yeah.
Why be better? You and I have talked before. There's like 7 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
Probably 6,999,000,000 of them aren't even trying to be better. Why be better when sometimes it's so easy or tempting to just not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe it's easier to have a desire to be better when there's an external force or motivator that's bigger than you. And you can have that be a lot of different things, right? You could say, I got my wife and my kids, or whatever that situation is, or God, or right. There's all these, maybe I think that's a starting point. And I think that when speaking from experience, maybe was my motivator at the beginning, right? Is that people around me, I got to be better for those people. And that still is part of it, but I think now it's just, I think it's good to get tired of being stuck in a rut, and I want to be different. Like I can see things about myself that I want to be different. Mm-hmm. And so that's, and hopefully everyone else benefits from the effort that I put into that,
Okay. That's a fair answer. Okay. So, we just started talking like 20 minutes or something without the recording on, right?
Yeah. And that was the best stuff we'll ever have.
That was the best stuff, man. Yeah, it's gone. It is gone.
Yeah.
But you were kind of banging on teachers, teacher social events. As a non-teacher, you go into these events and you look around and you think, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. It's like a bunch of people that have never been outside in public before, and they finally got let loose.
So, okay. But out of respect for teachers, Tyler Gould, teach me something, man. What's moving in you? Teach me something.
All right. Well, let me read you this quote that I've been thinking about. And this is Ernest Hemingway. He says, "There's nothing noble about being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self."
Ooh. What? Okay. I'm thinking right now, scrolling way back in the RMIT archives, going to one Quinn Laurie talking about comparison.
Yeah.
Right. And comparison being the thief of joy. And I'm with Mr. Hemingway on that. I think that's fantastic. I think crazy things happen when we do try to rise above other people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of human nature. I mean, history tells the same story over and over again of people, establishing classes and, trying to be better. And that better thing is a crazy black hole because you want to get more, and it's not more. It's not more for the sake of doing good. It's more for the sake of having more than Tyler.
And right? I wonder if there's like this transition, this or evolution of the desire to be better, because I think like if I go back, if I rewind, 10 or 15 or 20 years, maybe my idea of being better was a car or a house, or, just like you said, it's sort of that keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. I get a little further down the path, being better is, if I look at my external motivators, obviously the family is right there on that list. And then God is right there on that list too. So, it changes from the collection of things that I equate to better to maybe knocking off some of those rough edges and just figuring out how to be a decent person. Right.
Yeah. And it's just to kind of marry those two thoughts with the question, why be better? And then what Hemingway's saying there, I think the challenge for me is that drive to be better is about influence.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If I could be better, then I could be an instrument in that hand of God to maybe be of influence and to be of service to those around me, including those closest and nearest and dearest to me, right? My family. But if I'm a wreck,
yeah,
right, I'm no good.
Yeah.
I'm no good to him. I'm no good to the people. I'm no good to my neighbor. I'm a burden, actually. And I would love to be considered a blessing and not a burden.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, if you've seen the movie Castaway, right?
I love Castaway, man. I'm jonesing to watch that, actually.
Right. So you're Tom Hanks on an island without the dental issue.
Ooh.
And you have no Wilson to hang out with either. Okay. It's just you. But you're comfortable, right? We're not talking a stowaway or a castaway on an island, right?
So basic survival is not in question.
Not in question at all. You've got everything provided for, but it's just you. Does the pursuit of being better still continue?
For me personally?
Yeah.
Yes. Knowing what I know and believing what I know, believing what I believe, the other driving force behind being better, and the two are actually married. I'm trying to be better because there was a perfect one that I'm trying to be like, right? So Jesus Christ comes and he lives a perfect life. And then he says, be like me.
Yeah.
Even as I am, right? And so I'm striving, even if I'm all by myself, I think that we have that internal fire to be the best that we can be and to try to be like him. Here's the reason why they're connected. I'm more influential the more I'm patterning my life after him.
Right. And I guess the reason I asked that question is because when we talk about, because I agree with you 100%. I mean, I'm with everything you said. And if we're talking about that idea of influence, right? But we take away the ability to influence others and it's just us. What does that look like? And I agree with you, right? We continue to press, because I think once, maybe when we talk about the evolution of our desire to be better, maybe once we have that deeper understanding of who we are and an internal perspective, then the drive is there, right? Regardless of whether we're one person.
I think that's right. I think that the second that you have that, the second that you see where you fit in God's plan, you'll feel it inside you.
Right.
That drive. And I think that a lot of folks that maybe don't feel it, it's not like it's not there. They just don't necessarily know where they fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They don't know where they fit. But when you know where you fit, who you were before you came here, why you're here, where you're going, then I think that kind of wells up inside you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a drive. Like you feel it. It's that call to be better.
Right.
Right. And I think that's at the heart of this podcast project that we have. But, I love the conversation that you have sometimes with folks, and that question that you sometimes ask people about their best.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you share that a little bit with our listeners?
Yeah. I feel like, I think that, and I've had this discussion with a lot of different people, but, I posed the question, for them to consider when they were at their best, right? Just if we could all just kind of sit back and say, when was I at my best spiritually, emotionally, right? Just, I felt like I was at my peak, and that could have been 10 years ago, 20 years, whenever that is, could have been yesterday. But the challenge is, in my mind, to become better than that, right? If we can look at that high point and say, okay, this is where I was. Now, how do I get above and beyond that? I think that's the challenge. I feel that all the time. Like, I feel that like deep inside of me saying, hey, do some more. You got a little more time to give. You got a little more energy to give. You're sleeping for 5 hours, for crying out loud. What are you, lazy? 4.5. But you know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit more. And I think, for some people, maybe that's an overwhelming conversation to have with yourself. But I think that I really believe that is the challenge that we're asked to take on.
See, I love that idea, because I think that there's power in that reflection, so that you can actually recreate it and then exceed it.
Yeah.
But if we were to go to those places in our life where we were at our best, I think that what I love about that is that was you.
Yeah, right.
That's 100% possible. That's doable, because you have been there.
Well, and
done it.
Yeah, and that's if we go back to Hemingway, right? There's nothing noble about being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. So if we look at where we were and how do we push ourselves to the next, right? That's the more noble cause, right? Look, if we go back to your point about influence, I think if we're continually pushing ourselves to get to a better spot, that ability to influence becomes greater. And I don't think it's even through the things that we say. I just think it's through what we do. People are looking at Mike Freeman and saying, look, this is how this dude lives. Right. I mean,
that's scary. That's scary.
Well, people admire the eggnog intake. All right. But yeah, I love that discussion, because I feel like it's I ask myself that all the time. I want to be, I like the idea of being self-motivated for improvement.
So you know what I kind of have as a driving force, and I love that drive. I love that feeling. Like you said, it's internal. It's a fire.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't burn very bright when you wake up and you have 2 dead cars in the morning. Right.
No, that'll douse it pretty quick.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I think that I often ask myself, what does valiant look like?
Yeah.
Like, I would love, we have some scriptures in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that, talk about being valiant in the testimony of Jesus. And like, what does that look like? When my kids get up and they go to school and they're a handful of members of their church in their school, to me, that's kind of valiant.
Yeah.
Right. People know who the Mormon kids are at school. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Right. Yeah.
And now in my role in life, in the many roles that I do play, what does it mean to be a valiant husband? What does it mean to be a valiant father? And I think that word, that is a cool, that brings up some cool feelings in my heart.
Yeah. I think that when I think about that word, what comes to my mind is determination and courage. Right. I think those are two things that come to mind when I think of the word valiant. So if we talk about what does it mean to be valiant in the gospel of Jesus Christ, I think, we're determined, right? We're determined to follow. We're determined to change. We're determined. We have courage in the face of whatever, temptation, adversity, you name it. But look, tonight, Mike, we have Wes Franks is going to join us tonight, right? Yeah. And Wes is a friend of yours, and I met I think I might have met Wes once or twice, but we haven't really interacted much. We talked last night on our pre-show call. I'm excited to have him weigh in on this actually, and hear what he's got to say about being valiant and change, right? And what it means to change.
Yeah, I think valiant is a great word because Wes, to me, Wes is a good friend. Wes lives here in Redding, California, and I believe Wes epitomizes that valiant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I would actually argue that Wes might be the best version of himself right now.
Well, then let's dissect that because I want to know how he got there and what I got to do. So
no pressure. No pressure on Wes. I hope I didn't set the guy up, but I from what I know about what Wes Franks is and what he's about, he's doing it right.
Well, let's open the doors, let Wes into the room, and let's have a discussion. So, what's going on, Wes?
Not much. I'm glad you guys gave me time to get my hair done. You know,
you look like Franks, $1 million, man.
Hey, Wes Franks, welcome to the richest man in town. I want to apologize for my hair. I've been wearing a Santa hat all day. And this is what you get.
Well, as you can see, I don't have hair, so think yourself lucky.
Hey, Wes, I know we had a one heck of a party in the pre-show. Maybe the funnest pre-show we've had since. No offense to our other guests, but
yeah.
But we're not talking cereal right now, man.
You know,
okay? we will have the great cereal debate in a second. Those are some eternal questions of the soul. Absolutely. That we will get to. But I just said some things. I thought they were pretty complimentary about Wes Franks, and maybe you could speak to a couple of these prompts, these questions. Okay.
Okay.
My question, Tyler's question that he often asks himself and those that he's working with is to recall a time when you were the best version of yourself.
Yeah. See, I knew you guys would come in heavy stuff right out of the gate, right? I mean,
the best version of yourself. What did that look like? And then two, I was thinking about that. Like, when have I been valiant in my faith, valiant in my testimony? And I actually argued to Tyler that Wes Franks is valiant in his testimony. And I actually argued that Wes Franks might be the best version of himself right now, thus earning him the invitation to be on the Richest Men in Town podcast. What are your thoughts on the best version of Wes Franks?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I will share that. And then I question why you had to argue that fact.
It felt weird making all these hot takes with you not in the room. So it's like, let's get Wes in here, and then he can let us know that we're crazy.
Yeah. So let me just start off with the valiant part, because I think the valiant part, not that I wasn't valiant 3 years prior to today, because I think that the valiance has always been there. But I'm a deep down from the time I was a teenager, young kid, the things that I remember with my father, watching NASCAR right over on the weekends, drag racing. I mean, classic metal, and not the music either. It's just been, it just has always rolled through my blood, and cars have been a big part. And so the goals when I got married, started the family, was always to have a couple specific automobiles. And I had the opportunity over the last 6 years to do that. And the valiant part came when
hold on, really quick. So you're like a car guy.
Yes.
So when your daughter calls up saying my car just died, you know what to do.
Yeah, she sends those to the mechanic because they have computers. We're talking cars that have, carburetors, but I guess they have EFI now, fuel injection, but they have a transmission, they have an engine block, and they, air, gas, fuel, and, and spark, and away we go. So yeah, we're talking the old school stuff, but
classic.
Yes. So I had the opportunity to purchase what I considered my dream car. It was a 63 Chevy Nova. Pro Street, tubbed. It was just, and I spent 2 years just building it the way I wanted it to.
Awesome.
Some of the things that were going on in the background that people don't know, and I did have to share this with my wife, was this car mentally consumed me. Mentally, it was like 90% of the thoughts that went through my day. If we were on vacation, right? I mean, that I was thinking about what I would do next, right? if we were out to dinner, it was just like, man, I could do this, right? And I was still in tuned, right? The scriptures were still being read every day, prayer, magnifying the calling. It's just that this was an addiction, a mental addiction. And I didn't know how bad it was. So the Valiants came in, the church had introduced Come Follow Me, right? And the very first topic was the New Testament. So it was November 2 years ago. I was doing a little pre-reading one Sunday evening, and it had to do with the rich young ruler, Luke chapter 18. And when I got to the very last verse, this impression came into my mind that I needed to sell my car. I closed my scriptures. I, told my wife, I looked at her and she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, I think I need to sell my car.
Okay, hold on. Back up. For those that may be familiar, maybe not, rich young man comes to the Savior. He's been obedient his whole life, right? And he says, "What do I need to do?" I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Savior says, "Sell everything you got and come follow me." Right?
That's it.
Yes.
And he says, he doesn't say anything. I think he walks away.
Right. Right.
We don't know, and the record's incomplete. We don't know if he does what the Savior asked him to do or not, but we know that was a hard thing for the Savior to ask that young man to do. Okay. And so you're reading that, you close the book, and you have a thought, you need to sell your car.
Yes. And so it was really tough because my wife goes, she didn't think that was necessary. She goes, you're a good person. No, everything is in order. You've worked very hard. You know, this is what you deserve. But in my heart, right, without me having told her where my mental thoughts have been, and how much this thing consumed me. So I reached out to a couple acquaintances that I knew that, had expressed in the past that they liked the car, how it looked and all that stuff. So this one young man came over, looked it over, came back with his father, looked it over. He actually lost his car in the car fire. So, I mean, he had some money. And a couple weeks after that, he actually backed out of the deal. Right. So I thought, okay, this was just a test, right? The Lord was just testing me to see if I would do this. And then I realized that I probably needed to take it one step further. So I was working out of town at the time. I actually posted it on Craigslist. I posted it on Facebook, and within 15 minutes, I took it off because I was scared. I was scared that somebody would actually buy it. Mm-hmm. So I realized that this was a lot harder. I went to bed that night, and the next morning when I was leaving my hotel room, because I was actually in Medford headed to Eugene, in my prayer, I told the Lord that if he needed truly for me to do this, that I didn't have the strength to do this on my own. That if he needed me to sell this car, that I needed him to just have somebody just reach out to me. And brethren, I'm not kidding you. I walked out of my hotel room. I got into my car. That ad was only on Facebook and Craigslist for 15 minutes. I started my car and my phone rang. Answered it, and it was a guy he was a firefighter. He was actually stationed in Florida, lived in Redding, saw the car, saw the ad, and said he wanted to come look at it. And I said, sure. He goes, well, I'm going to send my wife over and my best friend. They'll be there on Saturday. So I thought, okay, we're going to do this. So Saturday came around, they came over, they walked around the car, they looked at it, and the friend, his best friend goes, okay, I think he's going to buy this. And a little bit of history, I actually had built a brand new motor for the car, right? It was just pretty much everything that I wanted, and the motor had not been installed. It was just kind of sitting there, and parts just waiting to be assembled so I could put it in there. So this was a big thing for me. This motor, it really got me excited. So I told him I'd make him his best friend. I told him I'd make him a package deal. We do the car and the motor, and they left. And I'm not kidding. I shed a couple tears, right? This thing was going to happen.
Did the car have a name?
The license plate said Sinister one. So just by the way, I just sent you, Mike, a picture of it on your phone. So if you wanted to check it out. So yes, So, which is crazy, right? I don't have any tattoos, right? I'm far from being a sinister guy, but it just fit. So a week went by and I hadn't heard from this gentleman at all. And I thought, okay, we're in the clear. I've done my part. And he hadn't reached out to me. So I called, this was right coming into Thanksgiving. I called the guy who was going to assemble the engine. I sent him a text message and I said, listen, over Thanksgiving, let's put the motor together and we'll just put it in the car. And I'm not kidding you, about 5 minutes after I sent that text, this guy calls me. He said, hey, listen, I'm being transferred down to Corning. There's a fire down there. So I'm coming back to California. And I'm in Eugene, Oregon at this point in time, and he's still in Florida. He goes, I will be there tomorrow. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? And I'm all, man, I'm in Eugene. That's 5.5 hours away. And I said, okay. I said, here's the deal. I said, I can meet you at 7 a.m. because I have to be back in Medford by 10 o'clock. And he goes, okay. So I hung up the phone and I was thinking to myself, we're going to see this through. He came over 7 o'clock the next day, walked around it, offered me a cash deal, more than what I was actually asking with the, combined with the motor. And I think that was a Thursday. And then he came and picked it up on Saturday. So
what did that do for Wes Franks? Shedding that car, what did it do?
Yeah.
So the first thing that I noticed right away was my mind was clear, and it had not been clear in 2.5 years.
What was the car holding you back from?
Progression, right? There wasn't an opportunity, I firmly believe, for the Lord to get a word in, or the Holy Ghost to get a word in, because it's all that I thought of, right? I feel I was going through the motions, right? I was doing all that we are counseled to do, right? Journaling, magnifying your calling, all that stuff. But it was I was unable to bridle the passion. And that's the truth of the matter. There was a false God. And unfortunately it lived in my garage,
So Wes, what does it look like? What's the difference that you see now with the car being gone? I have the picture on my phone right here, and other than having that beautiful piece of machinery at your house.
Yeah. So I think what it did is, and it's pretty much the direction I think the rest of my life will go, because I've just gotten to the point that, because I had focused on automobiles so much when I achieved a certain age and a certain lifestyle, that, my goal had always been a shop, a couple cars to tinker, to rebuild. And that's where my evenings would be. And that's kind of how I figured I would spend the remainder of my days, right? My children are grown and I'm going to do this. I'm going to build some and sell them and buy some more. But what I've realized with this, and it's not easy, right? I mean, I still pull up Craigslist and there's thoughts that come into my mind about buying a 53 CJ3A Willys Jeep, right? Or buying a Volkswagen or an oval window 57 oval window Bug. I mean, it never stops, right?
Yeah.
But what it's been able to do is I've realized that with being able to push this aside, that if I choose to, which is probably where I will spend the direction of my life, the remainder of it when I retire, is in the service of the Lord. And I truly do not believe that I would have been able to do that with those passions. There was one or the other, right? You cannot worship two gods.
Yeah.
You cannot. Either one will bring you closer and one will bring you farther away.
Yeah, Wes, thanks for jumping in right away with something like that means so much to you, because really, Tyler, you get a vibe, right? You get a vibe why I could be hanging out with Wes Franks and be like, oh my goodness, Wes, I got a podcast and you got to get on this thing because of the way you live your life and because of the choices and because of the space that you've given the Lord. But I just think it's so great how you responded to that scripture. And we've actually had some moments from guests on this podcast where they too have heard similar.
Yeah.
Right. Not sell all your stuff and follow me, but similar calls to help those in need, right? To make a change and see people living under bridges and, know, and John Taylor last week, even just going and praying for people on the streets, those that are unfortunate among us, but see them. And I'm just listening to your story and I'm thinking, what would be that counsel for me? Right. And how can I make sure that I'm opening myself for that revelation to be able to make that change, whatever that change might look like in my world.
Well, here's the cool thing though. I mean, we talk about, consider when you were at your best, right? And Mike says to me before you got on, and he reveals this, right? Wes is at his best right now. Okay. And I can't argue that point. I'm listening to what you're talking about. And I'm going, yeah, this guy's probably right where he needs to be. but
well, hold on. Can you share Hemingway's quote? Because Wes wasn't on the call too, because I think that ties into it.
Yeah. So here's the continuation of that thought, right? Is consider when you're at your best. And then the challenge then is to be better than that. Right. So Hemingway, this is Ernest Hemingway said, there's nothing noble about being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self.
Yeah.
And so when I read that, to me that's like the eternal pursuit, right? Because hopefully, when I talk to people about this, I'm always like, hopefully when I ask you when you're at your best, it was an hour ago. Right. Or 15 minutes ago, but maybe it was 20 years ago, whatever. But if that's the case, now the challenge is be better than that. Right. And I think that there's maybe, I've had some interpret that as, man, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. But then I think, well, that's exciting to me. I was telling Mike last night.
Just hearing you say that.
Yeah.
Just hearing you say that does excite me. The idea is like, what are you chasing? I'm not chasing trying to get more than my neighbor. I'm chasing my best self.
Right. So go ahead, Wes. Weigh in on that. Dissect that for us, would you?
So lately, right? And I'd say probably within the last year more so than in the past, but it has been really me reflecting and highlighting and putting to memory parts of my patriarchal blessing. Because those promises that are in there, I just turned 50, right? So 3/4 of my life is over.
Yesterday, right? Yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. And, happy birthday.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a day behind right now, right? So I mean, it's 3/4 minus 1 day. So if you look at that and you read over the promises that are in those in our blessings individually, and I understand that some will be later in life, later afterwards, but there are clear ones that I know that can't wait. So in order for me to be the best version of myself to receive those, that is, I guess, if you really want to know, that is what I pray about. And that's what I focus on for clarity as to what do these blessings mean? How do I obtain them? What, that clarification, and then just moving forward so that I am worthy and available when that time comes.
I love it, man.
Yeah, that reminds me of the conversation we had with Katie Sellers. The idea is looking at something like that and asking, in prayer, prayerfully considering what lack I yet.
Yes. Yes.
What am I lacking? Now, careful, because the way that hole gets filled is usually through hardship.
Right. What
lack I yet means, okay, Mike, I've got some lessons coming your way. And if you're paying attention, you're going to be able to fill in what you're lacking as a result of these experiences. And by the way, they might not be that easy.
Right. But that's why I throw in a disclaimer.
I like a disclaimer. Let's hear it.
No, in prayer, I just throw it in. I mean, that's my fine print. What lack I yet? But please, I know that this may come with some form of trial and adversity, but maybe not.
I think there's this constant adjustment, right? Because I think that, obviously it's what seek ye, right? And I think that if we're thinking about the patriarchal blessing and all of these things that are spelled out in there, I had someone tell me one time, it's what if you're seeking those things, right, then we'll find those things.
Right.
So it's where we're tuned in at. And then I think the other thing too is that for me, it's a constant evaluation of good, better, best. Right.
Yep.
Like this, I'm in a good way right now, but am I in the best way? Like what, and that's why I like that idea of like, look, I'm doing everything I need to be doing and I enjoy this car, but is that distracting me from something bigger? And I love that idea. I really appreciate you sharing that.
But see that back to that car, that the interesting thing about that story is people like your wife looking at it would say that's too much, right? They would say that's not necessary. That's not tripping you up, but and the Lord knows your mind, you right? The thoughts and intents of our hearts. And I love that it came as a result of scripture study. Right. I love that it came as a result of you spending some time. And that's difficult because we don't necessarily give it the time that it should have in our lives sometimes.
Well, and I love that it came from scripture study, but that there was an immediate evaluation and then reaction to that evaluation. Like, this is what I need to do. And I think that, sometimes, and we've talked about this on the show. I mean, there's been times where I know what I need to do.
Right.
And I put that right over here on the shelf.
Yeah.
I'll do that at a different time. Right. And so I really like that idea. And that's, for me, that's one of my personal goals, right? Like, if I feel it, I do it.
But
now,
I'm
not great at it, but I'm trying.
Isn't it funny though that we'll say prayers asking, what am I lacking? And the answer will come and we'll be like, that goes on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right. My best self is probably right over there on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If I would just respond to those promptings that I have shirked, right, that I have shedded and like, whoa, no, that one's kind of uncomfortable. Ooh, nope, I don't have time to do that. Right.
But the interesting thing, Wes, too, is I feel like there's like seasons for all this, right? Because, someone can be listening to this podcast and be building the Sinister 1, the Sinister 2 in their driveway, right? And they're fine. And it's okay. And it's great. And they're doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
If you're listening, we're not saying sell your car.
But if you are going to sell it, call myself or Wes Franks. We'll have a discussion. But the reality is, right, that there's nothing wrong with that until you get to that point where you have the moment that Wes has, where you say, you know what, there's something else.
But
that
that's
could be consuming me.
That's why that scripture is so powerful and important to understand. That was the Lord's counsel to that young man.
Yeah.
That was not him standing on a ship talking on the shoreline to hundreds of gatherers.
Right.
He went to the Lord and the Lord said, this is what you need to do, because he knew the thought and intent of that young man. Right. So Wes gets his answer because God is mindful and knows Wes. And I love that word progression. I love that it was basically capping your progression. It wasn't taking you on a highway to hell, but it was.
Although that might have been playing while you're driving the
I can either confirm or deny.
Right. I saw the picture. That's the first song that came to mind. I don't know.
But your progression was stopped. Your progression was stopped because it was getting in the way and you weren't providing any space for him to work in your life, right?
So if you look at the very last verse of Praise to the Man, right? One of the near and dear songs, I think, of most members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For years, I thought that verse, because as you listen to songs, sometimes you don't pick up on the words and you just kind of think, oh, it sounds like this. So the first couple of words of that was, sacrifice brings forth the blessings of heaven. For years, I thought it said, sacrifice dreams brings forth the blessings of heaven. I think they mean the same thing, because I know that the prophet Joseph sacrificed his dreams at age 14 to pursue what he was called to do. There is no doubt in my mind that 14-year-old had plans to have a farm, children, follow in his father's footsteps and, clear land and just, try to make a living for his family. I believe those would have been his dreams. But because of his vision and what he had signed up for, had agreed and moved forward with, he sacrificed that portion to restore the gospel of Jesus Christ. So when this situation came around, I looked at it as, the hindsight, it reminds me of the same way, right? It was a sacrifice of a dream that brought me blessings. And I am not that person that I was, a while back.
And the interesting thing is that sacrifice of the car is not the last sacrifice that will be made for progression.
True.
Right?
True.
And so we look at that and it's this, for me, it's this constant look at what do I need to shed? What needs to be put aside? What, and that doesn't mean we become singular, right? We don't become this, because we can be broad and we can have a depth of interests, right? And we can have these different things that motivate us, but we have to have that core thing be the driver.
Right? Well, and shedding by that good, better, best criteria.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
That's how you shed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Tyler, I think you're spot on, right? There could be individuals listen to this, and there's plenty in the world, right, who can manage having a classic vehicle or whatever. They can manage that, right? Sure. Their makeup, right? The way they are designed doesn't have the effect that it, was on me. So,
but I love that. I think that that's so powerful to be able to look at yourself and recognize that thing, right? If you can look at yourself, and I'm working on this still to this day, right? But if you can self-evaluate and go, this thing derails me, or this thing distracts me, or this thing hinders me in some way, and to be able to look at that and say, that's out. I love that thought. I want to be that guy. Wes, I want to be that guy.
Well, some of those things aren't bad things.
Right.
But when taken to extremes, as we are all prone to do from time to time, right? Like I have recently, I have overcome my addiction to chess.com. I don't know if I even let you in on this, Tyler. It was a struggle, man.
No, is this a 12-step program?
It was a struggle. But it was like becoming like, it's similar to what Wes was saying. When I had nothing to think about, I was thinking about chess moves. And that's like, I got into a deep dark hole, man. We're talking a couple of hours of chess.com, and I had to, after a couple of days, it's like, I gotta step out. Right. And there's nothing wrong with those things. Now, granted, there are some things in this life that are addicting that will strip you of light.
Right.
But those things that aren't bad, but don't necessarily pass that good, better, best test and steal you of your capacity because for whatever reason you grab onto it, that could easily, right? That pathway to hell is a gradual slope with no mile markers.
Yeah. It reminds me though of like, be still and know that I am. we sort of live in this time where it's like we have to be distracted constantly. You know what I mean? Like, I got in the car, I have an 11-year-old at home. This is probably a couple years ago. We get in the car to go somewhere, and, we're going to drive 20 minutes to go to dinner or something. We get in the car, we're driving out of my neighborhood, and she says to me, Mom, or she says to my wife, can I use your phone? And she says, why do you need my phone? And she says, I'm bored. Right? I'm bored. We've been in the car for 30 seconds, right? I'm bored. So, and my answer to her all the time now is like, it's good to be bored, right? We have to learn how to be bored and live with our own thoughts and kind of process our own thoughts. And I think that if we get so caught up in these distractions, chess.com, Sinister one, whatever it is, right? That then
fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah. It becomes this noise that I'm bored. I don't want to deal with what I could be. I just want to be distracted from what that pursuit is, or be distracted from what that work might look like. Well,
I'm dying to dig into Wes Frank's life, right? So you talked a little bit about growing up with Dad and watching NASCAR and getting the car bug bit, right? It bit hard and you were hooked. Sounds like from an early age. But can you take me back to that young Wes Franks? Where did you grow up? Talk to me about your parent influence. Talk to me about your family a little bit.
Yeah. So my parents divorced when I was 3. My mom went off and they both remarried. So my mom and I've been blessed with 2 fathers that I love dearly. So I would never refer to my second father as my stepfather, right? I mean, he's just a wonderful man. My mom and my second dad joined the church when I was 7, and my dad went and remarried a couple years after that. So I had siblings, no biological siblings, but where my life, and I'll just summarize this, Mike, because you and I actually have an individual that has really transformed or influenced our lives in a way that the reason why I am now active and the reason why you are a member. So I'll get to that. When I turned 12, my dad wanted me to come live with him. My mom was very concerned with the influences.
Where did you grow up? Where are we at?
We're here in Reading.
Okay.
So yeah, I've never left. I've been very fortunate to find employment and to be able to, raise my family here. So at age 12, my dad started to, say, hey, you're of that age, you can come, live with me, and so on and so forth. And my mom, knowing the I guess influences that would be available to me, that was never something that she wanted. Well, when I turned 16, I saw some things that my stepbrothers were doing with my, by living or visiting my dad, that, for whatever reason, they just became very attractive to me. And I went through a rebellious stage. I really made my mom and my dad's life a living hell. Actually, I have apologized to them over and over. It would crush me if my children were to treat me, how I treated my parents. And finally, they gave in and they said, you want to go, then you need to go. So I spent the age from 16 till I was 20 years old, doing things. And at that point in time, which I thought would bring me happiness. And yeah, so it wasn't until my second year in college at Shasta College, I walked into a classroom, and what usually happens with a young man when you walk into a classroom, I saw a girl, right? And it just wasn't any girl. She was beautiful. And I think the first thing that struck me was her eyes. And matter of fact, it's still her eyes to this day. But I kind of played it cool, right? I didn't sit right next to her. Kind of joked around. I think one point in time, shortly after we started class, she asked to, copy some of my test questions and that were given to us. And I said no. But about 4 months, we started hanging out a little bit more. And then we started dating. And it probably was about 9 months after we'd been dating. We were sitting on the couch one afternoon, and she was not a member of the church. And I don't even know how the topic came up, but she says, why don't you go back to church? I thought, all right. So I called my parents up and I said, hey, we'd like to come and visit with you and, attend church this upcoming Sunday. So our stake center, right, that we have across from Enterprise High School was being renovated at the time. So their ward was actually meeting out at Shasta Lake, which was Redding's second ward. I walked in and I sat down with my parents, and there was a wonderful bishop by the name of Rod Wilson. You know him?
I know Rod Wilson.
Yeah, I do.
Bishop Wilson that day was giving a talk about pre-stage young men who fall away from the church at that age and never come back. And he encouraged them, to come back, so on and so forth, get your life in order. I don't know how many pre-stage young men were in that congregation that day that had left the church, but I know I was the only one that made an appointment with him that day. And we got some things kind of put in order. Shortly after that, I proposed. I can honestly say I don't think my wife was as excited as I was about that proposal, but she said yes. And we got married. And the first 10 years, as I've said, I am in a post that I posted not too long ago about, because I look at her as God's gift to me. I truly do. I think I was so hard in my heart, just like with the car, right? There were so many distractions going on that I couldn't hear his voice. So the only way he was going to get through to me was he needed to give me this gift that was going to challenge me in so many ways, and that's how it came about. My wife and I, we worship differently, right? And we've always done that. She worships in her ways. I worship in mine. So raising children at time, it wasn't the easiest. My children did traveling sports, and doing things on Sunday just irked me. It just hurt me to the core, because I just didn't want that. I didn't want my children to be influenced that way. And there would be Mondays and Tuesdays where, I would just clam up and I wouldn't say anything. And there's a point to this, and I'm going to get to it, because this has to do with kind of wrapping things up. I took it to the Lord about that Sunday, and I turned it over to him. I'm an active cyclist, and for years I had set into my mind to myself that in our relationship, I was the one that changed, right? I wasn't active in the church because of what she said I should do. I became active. I became this completely different person, right? I stopped the things that I was doing when I wasn't going to church, and I became this other person. One day I was riding with a buddy of mine, and I was frustrated, and I had expressed the fact that I had changed and that I was a little upset and discouraged because she hadn't. The first time that came out of my mouth, like to somebody else, I realized, and I was rebuked immediately. It was very clear, because I realized in what I heard in my mind that if anybody should be upset, it should be my wife, because I was the one that changed, and I was not supporting her in the person that she was. So that kind of took care of that. My children have grown up. They have moved out. My twin girls ended up going off and playing college basketball. And one afternoon, about 4.5 years ago, I walked into a spare bedroom, because we now had spare bedrooms. And I just sat down and I reflected upon everything, right? Those Sundays, the just how life had changed and just everything that took place. And I realized what a wonderful gift that had been given to me. by the Lord giving me or having my wife come into my life. And I realized her selfless sacrifices that she had done, all the stuff that working 2 jobs so the kids could do traveling sports, working, I mean, just everything, just putting her whole life on hold for our children. And I think I was in the thick of things, raising our children, right? I mean, working every day, putting food on the table for 5 kids and going to this practice, that I had never had a chance to just sit down and just to look and to reflect on what truly she had done and who she is. So when she came home, I actually apologized to her for that, for not recognizing that. She still sacrifices to this day. She'll put anything down, anything aside for any one of us, especially her grandkids. And so I think for me, I am who I am. And I know it's been said on the show, right? That we are who we are because we've married up. But I can honestly say that I would not be the person that I am today if God had not put this person in my path. There's no way that I would be who I am today. She challenges me because we don't think the same, right? And we don't worship the same way. She challenges me on this stuff. And I don't think that I would be waking up every morning and reading my scriptures and writing in my journal and dedicating myself to Jesus Christ if I did not have the challenge that I have. If everything was given to me, right? If I walked through the door and family home evening was done, or she would remind me to say prayer, or, if she took the reins on all of this stuff, I would not be who I am. And I think the Lord knew that. And in order for me to be the person I need to be, I needed this challenge.
Have you, Wes, ever, I'm listening to you talk and you talk about that moment where your wife says to you, why don't you go back to church? And that's a powerful moment,
a hinge moment.
It changes everything. And I'm wondering if you've ever gone back and sort of dissected what was going on in your life that made you ready to say, yeah, why don't we go to church next Sunday?
So that the answer to that initially was I had realized, and I don't know if it was right in that moment, but it was shortly around that period of time, that I did not want to raise my children by the way I was living. I didn't, nothing against my father, right? Because I love my dad, but my dad's philosophy was do as I say, not as I do, right? My dad would, so there would be beer in the fridge, right? But don't drink the beer, but yet he could come home and have a couple beers every night. So, do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. And I think for me that is what, when that comment was made, that thought process was there, right? It was there. And I knew that she was the one. I knew that at that point in time, but I don't think she was there. Right?
Right.
But that was it. That whole concept of do as I say, not as I do. And
imagine,
I love that.
Imagine Wes's parents on the other end of that phone call.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we'd like to come to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's probably prayers answered on their behalf too. I mean, Wes, you went so many places there and there's so many things that I can add. I would like to personally honor Rodney Schaff Wilson.
Yes.
Tyler, we talked all the time about there's places in time that are common and they're normal places. But because of what we pass through in those places, those become sacred places.
Yeah.
And for me, the Wilsons' home on Belladonna, their living room is truly like the waters of Mormon to me.
Yeah.
That's where I would find refuge from the storms of a 19-year-old kind of a wayward life. And Bishop Wilson is on my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And I love that story, and it warms my heart just thinking he's no longer with us, but he's with us, right?
Yeah.
And he lives on.
have a young lady who's not a member of the church say you should go back to church, to have a bishop be in tune with the Spirit to put because we know, right, bishops don't speak in sacrament meetings. It's not something that just happens all the time. But yet to listen to the Spirit, to put together a talk specifically about priest age young men leaving the church. And then
who knew something about it, right? Because I believe that he's the only bishop I know that had a tattoo of a lady on his arm, I believe.
Yeah. And then just to show up on that Sunday, right? I mean, there's too many things that just, you can't say, oh, that was just all a coincidence.
Hey, Wes, we hear you honoring those. We hear you honoring your parents. We hear you honoring folks like Rod Wilson. Is there anyone else that you would like to honor right now, just in this space with our time together?
Well, just, I mean, besides both sets of my parents, right?
Well, and your wife being that gift, I think that's a great way to see those things.
Right. I would say my children, right? You had asked about the best version of myself, right? And I think as we are able to have our children grow up and move out of the house, I mean, their lives at that point in time are still starting or just starting. But I've been able to look at my children, and I know that my wife was a huge influence on this, but to be able to see their work ethic, right? To see them as contributors to our society, right? Of the 5 children, I have one that's currently actively going to church, but I love my children with all my heart. I mean, that doesn't sway my love. I mean, it doesn't affect that. I mean, there's a yearning, right? That I hope one day that happens. But I think for me, the other thing is just to really praise my children, because they were, except for my son at times, but my daughters, I mean, they were just so easy, right? They're so easy. And to be able to say I honor them is more or less for me saying thank you for taking my counsel, and for just being and following with that, so that you are just these great people. You're contributors, as I would just say, and I know it may just sound cliche, but I mean, truly mean, I mean, they're just like contributors to our society. They aren't out there vandalizing things or, and doing crazy stuff. Well, they may be doing crazy stuff, but, not illegal.
Right. I love it.
There was one point in there that I love the idea when you're demanding her to change, that blinds you from all of her contributions.
Yes.
So that moment in that spare bedroom where you turn and you start looking out instead of looking in, and then all of a sudden it becomes evident everywhere,
right,
of the good that she's done. Right. I think that's a power. I heard that, and I took note of that, because Wes, I needed to hear that today.
It wasn't
about
easy.
You. I don't need to. I'm not going to air my stuff. It's about you airing your stuff. But I needed to hear that today. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, I guess that conversation. It wasn't. I mean, the conversation I had, it wasn't easy. But I mean, my wife is such a loving person. I mean, I don't even think it affected her. Right. I mean, I'm the one that's getting a little emotional in this, apology that I'm building up for, and she's looking at me like, just spit it out. What's the deal? Mm-hmm. And then I said, well, I'm really sorry, for all of this stuff. And she's all, okay. I mean, that wasn't for her, right? That conversation, it needed to happen for me. But I truly believe that was that closure that I needed, that opened up my eyes, because as I look around and as I visit even some of the clients that I go and I visit with and I work with and I speak with, I see moms in a completely different light than I've ever seen them before, because they are selfless. They sacrifice so much for their children and for their families. And I'm aware I'm kind of a selfish guy at times, right? I will get grumpy if I don't go for a bike ride on Saturday. And there were times where my wife would just do whatever it took so I could get a bike ride in, and she may have to drive 2 different places with 3 different kids and dropping them off. But, she loved me, and she knew I needed to get my bike ride in,
What does cycling do? Because you are being way humble. He's not just an active cycler, Tyler Gould. He's a pretty phenomenal cycler. So like, I think the last time I was on a bike was like 1997. So I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but Wes, what does cycling do for you?
Well, I enjoy the competitive part, the road cycling, especially like towards the last 15 to 20 miles, and you're coming back into town and you're riding in a group, and just to be able to make other people suffer. I find great enjoyment. I always make sure I ride with people who, always aren't faster than I am, because it's terrible to be on the receiving end of that. But really it allows me to, it just releases a lot of the pressure and the stress. But it allows me to eat how I want to eat and maintain a healthy system.
Yeah. Wes, what do you talked a lot about your children. You have 5 kids, and can you talk about what being a father taught you and what you learned through that experience of raising 5 kids?
Oh, I think, yes, that's a great question. I mean, my children, well, I learned this, right? Marriage is built upon tolerance. And this is my counsel to young people, right? If you want to know something about yourself, you should get married. And then if you want to test your marriage, you have children. Because I think what children teach us is they teach us selflessness, right? We put our needs before our children's needs. We sacrifice the things that we would want, maybe what we would purchase, what we would hope for as far as worldly items, because our children need shoes, or they need this, or they need that. They need braces, right? And so, yeah, I would say what my children have taught me was, my children have been precursors to me being able to thoroughly love and enjoy, and to love in a deeper way, them and my grandchildren. Because when my children come home, I love the fact that my girls give me hugs, right? At 22, at 28, at 30, right? My children are not afraid to give me hugs, right? So that affection, and then to be able to love my grandchildren like that. So I would say, what my children have taught me, it's the selfless part and love.
That's awesome.
And we can all be dorks together,
Well, and sometimes we get caught up kind of thinking about the way we could be living if all of our dollars weren't going to kids.
I just told my daughter that the other day. I said, do you have any idea the lifestyle your mom and I would have if you weren't in the part of this equation? Be phenomenal, man.
So not to get off track, but we could put aside like the clothing and everything and just focus on the cell phone bill.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I mean, 400.
And their phone's nicer than mine.
Yeah. So you figure,
and they're complaining about their phone. I'm like,
yes. You figure that my children, I mean, the twins and stuff, they probably got a cell phone at age like 10, as far as that goes. And so I probably been paying $450 for who knows how long. So I just dissecting the phone bill out of that. I mean, the cell phone bill out of that.
What is you talk about some of the things your children have taught you as being a father. Now you're a grandfather. You've told us that you're 3/4 of the way through with this gig, so what is this new season of being a grandfather and a father to married children? What does this look like for you?
Yeah, so Sunday dinners.
Says Tyler Gould, who's staring that whole reality in his face.
I got a pen right here. I'm taking notes.
So right, because we know that there was a war in heaven, right? And that had to do with somebody saying, hey, you should do this, and this is who I would want you to marry, right? But it wasn't marriage, right? Or, the other way was, here, you have your agency and I trust you and I love you, so go out and make the choice yourself. So Luckily, I would say so far that my children have chosen great men who provide very well for them, who support them, and allow my children, my two daughters that are married, to, stay at home and to be with their children. But still, right, there's times that you look back and go, oh, I wish they would do it this way. I wish you would do this, right? But they have to learn everything on their own as far as
that whole idea of that surrender. I'm trying to come to terms with that, right? I was telling Mike, up until my oldest child, who's since served a mission, she's now off at school and doing her thing. There was this moment where you have them under your roof, and you are the influencer, right? You can say, you can direct. I mean, you don't have a lot of control even at that point, but you can at least get a word in there and try to sway something one way or the other. And I remember telling Mike, when my daughter left on her to serve a mission, I was telling Mike, I think that was the last time that she'll be in my house as a member of my household.
Right.
And now she's just, when she comes back, now she's visiting the house.
Yes.
And, that idea of surrender, I'm coming to terms with that. You got a few years on me, Wes, so maybe it comes with 3/4 of a life going by. I don't know, man.
Well, Tyler, at the same point in time, right, it goes back to trust. It goes back to what you and your wife have done, right? Yeah. Well, it's no different than what the Lord did for us, right? Taught us everything that we know. We just got some of it, but I mean, the foundation was there. So it's just replicating that, but it's truly having faith and trust in your children. I had one particular daughter who, in the very beginning, did not pick the cream of the crop. I mean, these were like leftovers, and it was very challenging just to see the manipulation, but then to see an individual, somebody who you loved, be sucked into that. And to think that to think that this individual said that they didn't have to work and my daughter had to work to provide, in that situation. It's very troubling to be able to have somebody like that come into your home and to be able to carry on conversations and know that you just, can't just slap them upside the head and shake them and say, why aren't you treating my daughter better?
Yeah.
So, I mean, those situations happened. And luckily my daughter actually wised up, and I'm very thankful. And I know that she is now today, but it took a while.
Right. Well, and that goes back to the whole thing we were talking about earlier, right? We have to be able to, we've all got to learn at our own pace. Like, I believe that at the core of me. It's just tough to watch the people that you love the most.
Yep.
Go through those things.
Well, so Wes, is there something looking back on your life that you learned the hard way?
Yes, matter of fact, there is, and it was early on. It was early on, right? I had after I graduated college, I went to work for this gentleman, or I worked for him actually while I was going to college, and he saw potential in me as far as being an entrepreneur and somebody who was hardworking. And so we started talking about going into partnerships in a business. And we opened up 2 franchises in Reading. And I was 26 years old. And I had these 2 businesses, and I was, the worker, and he was the financial part. After almost 3 years, things just didn't work out. Right. I mean, that's why I think the only partnerships that ever work out are law firms and accounting firms. Most partnerships, flounder terribly because of one reason or another. And ours was not the exception. Right. We did. So when the businesses were sold and we were basically back to starting over, one evening, I was talking to my wife because the partnership, dissolving it was not peaceful. It was not a very good, just like you can't imagine, but it just wasn't peaceful. And so I'm the type of person that I dwell on things and I talk about them, and I talk about them so much that I live it over and over and over. So my wife and I I was, after this was all done, venting again. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you weren't the only one that went through this. And I don't know what else I can say to that, but
boy, she's got a knack for dropping one-liners at the right time, right place.
Yeah. So I learned that was another, I guess, early on, that was a hinge moment as to why I would never go in, even though I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was one of those moments where like God put everything aligned and she said what she said, because that was my wake-up call that I never wanted to have my family experience going through what they had gone through. And that was that wake-up call. I reflected on everything that had taken place over the course of that, 2.5, 3 years, especially the last 9 months. And it was just like, oh, again, selfishness, right? Oh, how selfish of me to think I'm the only one going through this, but there was another person living it. And not only was she living it, but she had to hear about it over and over and over. So
yeah, that reminds me of a conversation recently I had with some kids. We took the family out to dinner. We're talking, and so I've got a college kid and a high school junior, and we were reminiscing about some things, and my daughter proceeded to inform me that there was a season where she kind of hated my guts. And it was like, what? It's like when I got a job and I pulled them out of the school where they were going so that they could come to my school so that I could be their principal. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's everyone's dream. Not so much, right? When the kids
asked me that, I would have told you that. Having your dad as your principal, man, that would sound like a bad idea.
When the kids let you in, and the funny thing is I threw it out there kind of jokingly, right? Like, hey, when you guys are older, you're going to have to spend a lot of money sitting on or laying on therapist couches, probably trying to undo some of the damage that I've done as your dad, right? Because there were seasons in their life where they couldn't get away from me. I was their principal. I was their church leader, right? Yeah. I was their flag football coach. And then all of us, I threw it out there as a joke, as an innocent joke. And then it comes back factual. It comes back like, hey, you know what? That was actually really hard. You took me away from all of my friends and dumped me into a new school. And I was like, and then the very next thing you think is, oh crap, what else have I done?
Right.
But right, thinking selfishly, yeah. I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. The other folks, like as Tyler often mentions, the other train cars connected to my my train weren't necessarily having the most pleasant experience with that, at least initially.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the idea of those people that are attached to you, and making sure that you're weighing all that in there. I remember at one point when we were leaving Reading, we're getting ready to move to San Diego, and my wife said, "Yeah, this is gonna be tough when we tell the kids." I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're moving to the beach. Like, I'm just gonna go tell them. They're gonna be stoked." And I sat them all down. I said, "Hey, we're moving to San Diego." And they all started bawling, like, immediately. And my wife's like, I don't even know what planet you live on, man. Like, you didn't see that coming, So I think
you saw that going differently in your mind.
Yeah, it was like a party. They were going to be singing about how great Dad was, It didn't work out. It rarely has when I've thought it was going to work out that way. But yeah.
Hey, Wes, in this season in your life now, what does better look like? What are you not? You don't have to air your stuff and like this. These are the things I'm trying to get better at. But what does that process look like of you trying to improve on your former self?
So, I mean, I guess the true answer is I kind of take it day by day. I mean, to be honest, because I look at it as putting forth the right recipes that we've been counseled, right? Scripture study, prayer, and doing and magnifying your calling and doing the best that you can at everything so that is actually revealed to me. Because for the most part, I guess if I'm going back to my patriarchal blessing, right? Being able to be and to do whatever I need to do so that those opportunities are extended to me when they need to be extended. So I think that, I'm very blessed to have a job. I mean, I went through a season where I was laid off 3 times in 6 years. This last time I was just hired on February 25th, 2020. So a week and a half, 2 weeks before everything shut down. Every time I've been unemployed, it lasts anywhere between 5 to 6 months. So I think I have a little PTSD, when it comes to conference calls or, different things, right? Where that everything comes rushing back as to what those events and how hard they were to go through, even though knowing, especially the very last time, that this too shall pass, but it is just not pleasant to live, knowing that God is going to open up a door, but you have no idea when that door is going to open and what it's going to look like and how it's going to look. But knowing that the 2 times I had gone through it previously, that I came out better than I was before. But the 3rd time, I mean, the same thing happened. It's just, I guess, how do I better myself, or what I'm trying to do is just be the best employee, that I can, to be the best husband that I can, to be the best father, the best grandfather that I can, and to enjoy what I have. I mean, I work out of town a lot, even during COVID. So the time that I have to spend with my wife, I think I cherish those moments more than I ever have. And I think a lot of that has to do with the revelations that I've discovered over the last 3 years, which has just developed my love for her even more. And I joke, right? I've said it to her, but I joke with other people that I want to die first. I don't want to be that. I don't want to experience what life would be like without her. I mean, she gets it all in order, right? She knows and reminds me of the kids' birthdays, right? The grandkids' birthdays. But just not only that, I don't want to, I know it's, again, selfish of me to say I want to die first, unless we could both be like the Notebook people and die at the same time. That would be pretty cool. But, I had that is
that's Tyler's favorite movie.
It's right up there.
It's good. So anyways,
so we often ask our guests this question right now, and thanks for sharing that. Thanks for letting us in on some of that struggle. Right now, Wes, there may be somebody that's right in the middle of one of those struggles. These are hard times. This pandemic has impacted all kinds of sectors of our economy, and there are folks that may be struggling with employment, with just the stability and security that employment can offer. What would you say to that person in the middle of that struggle, from someone who's been there?
It's an emotional roller coaster. It really is. I mean, there's highs and lows. I've realized that when it first happens, you talk it up, right? It's going to be okay. It's in the Lord's hands. Whatever is supposed to be is supposed to be. Something better is coming along. We don't live in the most fruitful area, being, Reading, as far as high paying jobs and, being able to provide for a family. And I think that only adds to it. And then there's the cycle and the roller coaster of having good days and bad days, having interviews that, deep down in your heart that you would not normally even take an interview, but because you may be desperate, that you may have to sacrifice and realize you're overly qualified for a position and say that you will do anything and everything to get that job. But then knowing deep in your heart that when they tell you no, because you're overqualified and have to go back down into the depths and not to be down there, right? Faith plays a big part, but I've truly come to realize, and I don't want to, make this sound that people may have to be here, but it is truly in the Lord's hands. This last time around, I knew what needed to happen. Matter of fact, I had a prompting that the next job that I was going to get was going to come from an acquaintance, a friend of mine. So, I mean, I, for some reason, had that feeling. It's just like, okay, so a buddy of mine one night sent me a post from LinkedIn about an account manager job in Sacramento. Didn't think anything of it. This was month 4.5, and I applied for it. And that's the one that I ended up getting. But I guess if I could give anybody advice into this, is that there are going to be roller coasters, and there's going to be good times and there's going to be bad times. Again, relying upon your loved ones. You know, if you have a spouse, communicate, and then apologize on the bad days. You know, because truly my wife even told me, quit taking it out on me. You know, I'm here. You know, I'm here to support you. Just don't take it out on me today. And just, I guess, patience. If there's one thing that's repeated at the very end of my patriarchal blessing, it's humble and patience.
Yeah, you got to love those two, right? Those are a couple of doozies.
Yeah.
How did you never, I mean, I served with you. I served with you through this last spell.
Yeah.
And I never saw you waver.
Yeah,
I never saw you derailed spiritually. What do you attribute that to? Or maybe it was a front.
No, because truly there's my take on this is there's nothing else that you should be doing more so than keeping your faith. Right? I mean, that is right. My favorite hymn, How Firm a Foundation, 85. Right? I mean, that is it. And it's, I don't know, it was definitely not a front. I mean, there could have been Sundays at High Council where I was smiling, but deep down inside, I was literally praying and praying for, you know, this burden to be lifted. But I found peace going to church. And this is the honest to goodness truth. When I walked through those doors on Sunday, and we had 3-hour church at that point in time, right?
The good old days.
Right. So this would have been second time around of being unemployed, not the third. And if there would have been some meetings before that would have gone 1 or 2 hours. I mean, I could walk through those doors and know that for 5 hours, I didn't have to worry about a single thing, right? That church building was as peaceful to me as it was walking into the temple. And I loved my Sundays for that, just because that was the peace. Because when I left and I jumped in my car and I came home, that's when everything would just come back. You know, the next day is Monday. What jobs are you going to apply for? Is anybody calling you back? You know,
active grind. Yeah,
exactly.
The other night, Wes, we were having a conversation and we were talking about discipleship, and I'm curious about that idea of balance. You spend right. You spend 8 hours a day working your tail off at your job, and you come home and you want to make sure that you're connecting with your family and doing everything there. And then this idea of improvement, especially when we talk about the spiritual things, right? I mean, how do we strike that balance? How do you strike that balance and push the progression meter forward?
Yeah. So that is an amazing question that I'm going to flip back, because I'm going to do a politician answer on this one.
Okay, good. Let's hear it.
And just open up. So here we go, right? We're rolling into Come Follow Me, Doctrine and Covenants, right? Mm-hmm. That's starting up here. So if you look at the counsel, right, that we are, and all the blessings that come from the prophets and apostles and the counsel and the blessings of reading the Book of Mormon every day, studying that book of scripture. So as I was wrapping up those studies and jumping into D&C, it was just like, okay, look what's being asked of me now, right? We're not talking about 30 minutes of reading the Book of Mormon and then saying, hey, I'm done. There is another chapter here of the Doctrine and Covenants to study 6 days. So how is that? Back to that. So that's what I'm working on. It's just like, okay, do I take an hour now? Do I take 30 minutes for the Book of Mormon or do I take 45 minutes? But then that 45 minutes isn't good, because depending on which one is more exciting, I may spend more time over in one versus the other. Yeah. Or I could say, you know what, I'm going to study one in the evening time, knowing that I am not a nighttime person, because I would rather jump in first thing in the morning and start my day off this way, because if I'm out of town traveling, I have a issue and a challenge with leaving Netflix off. Right? I will binge in a hotel room because there's nobody telling me not to.
Right.
So really, I mean, Tyler and Mike, I'm open to this, right? I mean, I think that there are members who are going to be looking at this right now, okay, well, man, do I just come follow me and not read the Book of Mormon? But man, there are those blessings that are promised in the Book of Mormon from studying it every day. I don't want to miss out on those.
Wow, that's you just you've dumped some different thoughts on me that I hadn't even really considered, to be honest with you.
Well, can I let you in on my simple brain?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So every day I am striving to, I actually write this down. Top of my list of to-dos every day is read WOG, W-O-G. And to me, that is a prompt to read the Word of God.
Right.
And I actually believe that He will guide and direct as I get in that habit of prayer. He will actually guide and direct the things that I am prompted to read. And that to me is reassuring. And it's a little bit liberating. It's not a cop-out to Wes's question.
Yeah. No, I like it.
I think I'm with you on that, Mike. I feel like when I start my study, I'll start in one spot and I could end up somewhere totally different by the end of it. And it's just the key to me, where that thought is going. Like what's hitting me at that moment in the starting point is where I end up.
Yeah,
I mean,
the key to me though is that there's a quote from Katie Flanagan that's really important to keep in mind. She says, "If your output exceeds your input, then your upkeep will be your downfall."
You got that? That's
break that down. If I don't have some type of input to start my day, and I just go out there and I'm all output, upkeeping that, maintaining that will be my downfall.
Well, I listened to, it was a podcast actually. Gosh, it's been a little while now, but someone was talking about balance, right? Work-life balance, and how do we balance all these things? And they spoke about that. They said it's a myth, right? And they said, I've thrown out the idea of balance and I've embraced the idea of presence. And that's sort of been my mantra ever since I listened to that. When I'm at work, I'm working. When I'm when I'm studying, I'm studying. When I'm playing with the kids, I'm all in with the kids. And that's sort of been my my focus, is to be 100% present in the activity that I'm involved in. And that's been liberating, I think, for me, because I think I was chasing that idea of balance.
Yeah.
Like I had to have this much time here and this much time here. And if I didn't do that, then somehow I was out of balance. And when I sort of let that go and started to be, I'm just going to be present, 100% present in this. And then 100% present over here during that time. That's changed things for me. It's been a shift for me, and it's made my studies more meaningful, much more meaningful.
Well, and I would add inspired presence, right? Because there's going to be times when you are sitting on your couch and you're in a book or you're reading or you're doing something and you see your kid and an opportunity presents itself,
sure.
and you close the book and you're there. But that I'm where my brain is, where my body is very elusive these days.
Yeah, right.
Because of technology, because of but we can back to Wes's car.
Right.
Wes could be at church sitting in a pew, and instead of worshiping and thinking about God, he could be thinking about motors.
Right. Well, yeah, and I think that previous to this shift for me, everything was attached to a time, to a clock. I'm going to study for 45 minutes. Boom. I'm going to go work out for 30 minutes. Boom. Right. And then I'm going to go play with the kids for 2 hours. Boom. And it was like this I don't know.
Are you playing with the kids?
On,
are you playing with the kids for 2 hours, or are you logging that time?
I was logging time, and I look back on that now and I'm thinking, what in the world? Like, that was the worst strategy. As I'm checking off my 45 minutes, I'm thinking, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to jump into my 30-minute activity.
And you're sleeping 3 hours.
And I'm sleeping 3 hours. And I'm almost 75% through my life, for crying out loud.
And what have I learned?
What have I learned, man? So, yeah, I guess that's I don't have a good answer to that. That's a great question. But I think one of the conversations we always have in this podcast is intentionality. And I think for me, intentionality and presence is the key. Now I'm working on that. Admittedly, that's not a mastered craft on my side, but it's something that I'm trying to. And
I think about what that looks like from Heavenly Father's perspective, right? Oh, here comes Mike, and he's calling me because it's 10 o'clock. Like, is he calling me because, he loves me and he wants to check in? Oh, he's just calling me and he's giving me the exact same thing he gave me last night.
Or I've always felt like when my kids, I'll be watching like a football game. My kids will come to talk to me about it. They're talking to me. I'm looking at the TV going, yeah, totally. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I find myself in a prayer going, like, I'm praying, but in my mind, I'm like, tomorrow at work, I've really got to make sure that I got to be present.
And actually, that's the more powerful prayer. Could you just let him in on tomorrow at work?
Right. Yeah.
Could you just let him in on, this is what's on my mind. I want you in my thoughts. I'm going to let you in on the intents and thoughts of my heart.
But out of all fairness, though, right? And I know, because I joke around. I mean, I agree with you guys, right? But the piece that I think is important that we don't give ourselves credit for is how many times throughout the day are we sincerely praying in our hearts for somebody we come in contact with, or somebody that pops into our mind, or truly, like you said, Mike, something about work. That I would say that my prayers in my heart are a large portion of my day compared to, and probably better quality at times than that call at 10 o'clock at night. And so
I admire that, Wes, and full disclosure, that is something I need to get better at.
There's a talk by Elder Cook, and he talks about this experience he has driving up over Lake Tahoe in the snow, right? He's going up over that direction, and they have to pull over, put chains on their car, and it's sketchy, right? It's not a good scene. And they finally get through it, and they call his wife to check in, and his son's on the phone with his wife, and he says, I hope we had a hard time. And he talks about that, and he relates that to how our prayers should be, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we get so caught up in this, they become rote, we just rattle them off. And I think about that all the time. Because think about that conversation, your comment, Mike, about just tell them about what's going on at work. To me, that's super powerful, and that's an important reminder. I hope I've had a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the powerful prayer, right? Rather than the one that I rattle off that I've got my thank yous, I needs, amen. I think that's the powerful thing. And I think if our study was that same way, where we were studying with the idea of what's working in me right now, and let that lead us. I mean, some of my best study sessions are that, right? Like, I've just had this bad experience and I don't know how to deal with it. Let me just find something that's going to give me peace on that. Then I find myself in the Book of Mormon, over in the New Testament, over reading.
And that's what I love. Wes, you've mentioned patriarchal blessing a couple of times. I think that I love the idea of being familiar with that and having that in our hearts. Like, who am I? What am I good at? What am I not good at? And then really looking at the scriptures being a hall of fame, right? For things you need to learn to be good at. Right. For those things that I struggle with, right? Like adversity. Joseph, is a Hall of Fame example of blooming where you're planted and thriving amidst adversity. And so I'm with you, Tyler. Like sometimes I'll be thinking about something that I'm not hitting, I'm not good at. And I'll be like, let's turn to the scriptures and look at somebody who was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's look at those. And I love this time of year where we're at Christmas and now we have an opportunity. Sometimes we kind of set the Come Follow Me program aside and we just say, let's tell stories of Jesus.
Yeah.
Let's what moves in you, what scriptures absolutely testify to you, heart and soul, from the crown of your head to the toes, that Jesus is the Christ. And let's just talk about those for a little bit. Right. And those are great. Those are great too. But I think that if we had some of that flexibility, my question, and one of the questions that I would love to throw towards Wes, one of the questions we talked about with John Taylor last week was, how are prayers answered? And Wes, I'd love to get your take on, how do you hear him? Right? Hearing him is important now as it ever has been, as a husband, as a father. How do you hear him?
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, I think it's kind of multiple ways. It could come from another person, right? Somebody could actually just say something and all of a sudden it's like, oh, boom, that just happened, right? That just answered that, right?
Yeah.
The other, I'd say more often than not, it is chills and goosebumps, right? A thought will come in and then that's what follows, the confirmation, the, reaffirming that, the decision or whatever I was contemplating or whatever it was. So those two areas for sure. I would say the goosebumps and the chills, right? and then the third part would be, after the goosebumps and the chills, is the humble feeling that you have of gratitude, and then saying, I thank you, but I don't know if I was worthy of that.
Yeah.
I was just looking through some things the other day, and I came across Christ in the experience with Lazarus and raising Lazarus. And there's a piece in that account where Christ gives thanks to God for hearing him. I just think when those chills and goosebumps come,
yeah,
man, how great is it to throw one of those up to heaven? Just like, hey, thank you for hearing me. Right. Thank you. I needed to hear that. I'm going to kind of try to do something here. From the First Presidency Christmas devotional, when you talked about other people, I had an opportunity to go back and listen to that again. And there was a story by Sister Craven, and I'm just going to read this to you. Okay. She says this: almost 3 years ago, our son-in-law experienced a serious medical crisis. In finding answers, he underwent many tests and procedures, which ultimately led him to needing heart surgery. As our son-in-law went into surgery, our daughter sent a message to her in-laws to give them an update on their son. From far away in another country where they were serving a mission, her mother-in-law responded with these comforting words: sending you heavenly hugs. Just a few minutes later, a nurse walked by, but then stopped. She looked into our daughter's tear-filled eyes and asked if she would like a blanket, but she declined, saying that she was okay. The nurse left immediately, returned with the warm blanket. She wrapped it tightly around our daughter and said to her, I feel like you need a heavenly hug.
Oh, wow.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works, right? We throw these prayers out there, and however it's coordinated, however it's orchestrated, other people come to the aid. I love that. Powerful.
Wes, a little while back, I want to go back to this if I can. You were talking and you said, I want to develop my love for my wife even more. What does that look like? What's that? How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I think that involves, well, it involves listening for me. It does. So true story. Okay. So there was something that she had mentioned about 2 months ago that she liked. And so I wanted to get it for her for Christmas. We're not talking an elaborate gift either, right? I mean, it was something very simple. It was a piece of, it was like a magnetic board, the size of a cork board that she wanted to be able to put up in the kitchen on a wall and then just stick all the kids as magnets. She'd seen it at somebody's house and she just says, oh, I'd like that. My wife liked 5 love languages. So I guess, Tyler, to answer your question is, in a nutshell, is to be able to understand, which I do know, her love language, which is gifts. My wife loves gifts, and to be able to make that more of a focus.
And how long have you been married, Wes?
It'll be 29 years next year.
29 years. That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that 29 years. I wanted to go back to that because I think it's an important, I think it's important that people understand that, right? That, you talked earlier about it's great to see my children getting married and, and kind of going through that. And I think that it's work, right? It's good work, but it's work, and we have to be involved in that.
It is. And it's frustratingly funny to watch your children bring 2 families together and to watch how they are immature in their early years of marriage, and to sit back and to see that as a mature married individual and how my wife and I communicate, and how we would say, dang, we would never say that to each other. We would never act like that. But just to know that these relationships are still in the infant stage, and until 2 people know how to work it out, they just jab, right? They're jabbing they're just throwing out jabs before you can slowly just kind of critique and to know what the hot buttons are and what you don't touch, and and to be able to skirt around and
a veteran can see that coming, like, right?
It's just
although hey, Wes, you say the word mature. Last night we probably had a half an hour discussion on breakfast cereal, right?
Yeah, that needed to be done.
Are you insinuating that's immature? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think it's funny because I saw a picture the other day. Somebody posted and that they were buying, these crazy teachers, Tyler, they were buying cereal for their kids, for their classroom, right? And they had all of this junk cereal up on the conveyor belt at the grocery store. And the clerk was confused, and he had to explain, hey, I'm buying this for my class. And I'm thinking, why do you got to excuse that, man? That's what my conveyor belt looks like right now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So Tyler, what's on your conveyor belt? What's your go-to breakfast cereal?
I'm a Cocoa Pebbles guy, man. I'm a Cocoa Pebbles guy. Right out of the gate, you get it's a bonus cereal. You've got great cereal and chocolate milk. I mean, it's you can't go wrong.
Okay, I'm with you on the milk. I'm with you on the milk factor. I do score that. I would question great cereal, Brother Franks. Wes Franks, what's your cereal of choice?
So there's actually 2, right? And it's really hard to differentiate, but I've combined them. Okay, so here we go. So we're definitely going Lucky Charms, hands down, Lucky Charms, and then Captain Crunch. But now Multi-Meal makes, right? They make Captain Crunch with the marshmallows. Oh. So you get Captain Crunch berries with the marshmallows, and boom, that's it. You got to let it set for about 5 to 7 minutes so it doesn't scar the roof of your mouth. That's the only cereal that you can eat soggy, in my opinion. And then it's just unbelievable. And I do not recycle the milk. You do not recycle the milk.
Yeah, because that's the problem, right? Lucky Charms destroys the milk. Like, there's nothing more gross on the planet than a bowl of milk after you've had the Lucky Charms. Like, I'm with you on the Lucky Charms. I'm with you on the marshmallows. But that milk factor, like Tyler talking like Cocoa Puffs for me, right? It turns the milk into chocolate milk. Bonus, right? But you're going Multi-Meal, so you're going big bag.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, if you're going to, you get, yes, there's
value, man. We're talking value here. Yeah, Mike.
I'm just wrestling with that.
What's on your list, Mike? Have you dropped yours?
Oh man, give me Reese's Puffs, man. Give me Captain Crunch. Give me Captain Crunch peanut butter, and I'll take the scarred roof of my mouth, because you can build up tolerance. If you hit it hard, right, you can build up some tolerance in that. It'll get calloused up there and you're good. Here's the question. Here's the problem I have with the Pebble business.
Yeah.
The Pebble business, legitimate. If you don't rinse that bowl, and I have kids, I can tell you they don't. You'll need a Dremel to get that thing off of there, right?
Yes,
so like you got to bring it and you got to rinse. We've got a Fruity Pebble fan in the house. I didn't even know they were still making those. They are still making those. Grace Freeman, the intern for Richest Men in Town, she's a Fruity Pebbles fan. I've actually never had a Pebble product, Tyler Gould.
Oh, that's a sad commentary. I feel like your pride is holding you back from progressing into the Pebble world. You know, you really need to dive in.
Hey, here we are Thursday night with Wes Franks. I haven't had dinner. I'm going to commit. I'm going to go have Fruity Pebbles for dinner.
So, all right. I want to see a picture of that on our Facebook page.
Okay. So I am all about Fruity and Cocoa Pebble milk, no doubt.
Yeah.
The thing that I enjoy about Fruity and Cocoa Pebbles is that, again, back to the soggy factor. So if you scoop them up fresh, they will like fall off the spoon.
Yeah.
Right. But if you can let them sit there for a couple minutes, I mean, the mound that you can get on your spoon, it is unbelievable because they all cluster together.
What I appreciate most, Wes, is that you've got cereals timed. You know, you got to let the Captain Crunch sit for 5 to 7.
I can kind of see he's got a timer, right? Like,
yeah.
It's like going off. It's like, oh, my cereal's ready.
Okay. So you dip your Oreo for 7 seconds.
Wait,
no.
You have a time? Like it's literally 7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you take a bite. Yes.
Okay, I'm all things junk food. It's crazy that I'm about to say this, but I'm a recent convert to the Oreo cookie.
Oh.
And here's the thing. I've only explored it without milk.
Oh.
I have never dipped an Oreo cookie in milk.
Oh man.
Let that just simmer.
That's terrible.
You have not tasted an Oreo until it's 5 to 7 seconds in milk.
What the hell am I doing with my life, guys? Like I gotta get my priorities straight.
Yeah, you really got to work this out. I mean, I've got notes that I made, but you should write that down. Oreos and milk, right? Like, that's got to be on your sheet somewhere.
7 seconds.
7 seconds, man. I haven't.
Hold on. Like we're not talking double stuff though.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
No, that's too much, right? That's too much.
No. What? No.
Is there ever too much Oreo?
I mean, it's just.
I mean, the only problem is actually not eating the whole sleeve, right? So you dive in and you finish half the sleeve, right, with like 7 or 8 cookies, and then you walk away, and your mind is saying, you know what, you're going to eat that other 7 cookies probably tomorrow, so why don't you just dust it off tonight?
Yep.
Because you're going to get on your bike and burn 5,000 calories. I'm not.
Plus, you got the old Tums chaser right afterwards. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a mature breakdown. I appreciate that. I think that's important, and our listeners will value that.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Malto Meal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, please add too.
Okay, so one thing that because I figure we're probably wrapping things up, and this is just it's popped into my mind, so I definitely want to share it. There are cycles to spiritual progression that an individual goes through, and I think I categorized it as 5, but you can look at 4, right? So the first part is your individual spirituality and finding your own testimony, right? That separation from your family, from your parents' testimony, and figuring it out on your own. So that's the first step. And that usually should wrap up sometime around your 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. So depending on, what you choose, right, you have the opportunity of mission in college. So your testimony, and during that time you have marriage. So the church at that point in time is 2 individuals, right? Or, trying to find that individual, and your spirituality is staying spiritual. So you get the right revelation as to who it is that you're going to spend eternity with. Okay. The third step, children. And I believe that part is you have a testimony, but you are focused on doing all that you can to nurture and develop your children's spirituality, right? So it's almost like you bypass your own personal testimony to give all that you have to your children to build that foundation. So when my children, right, the twins, the youngest, when they went off to college, I woke up. It's just like, wow, Sunday morning. I don't have to get out of bed anymore to be an example to my children, because my children aren't here. They're off doing their own foundation, right? So if I don't get up, who besides the Lord, right, and maybe some members at church, what am I going to church for now that my children are gone? Right? That thought came into my mind. It's just like, oh, I just spent the last 15, well, it's longer than that, right? 18, 20 years, just boom, 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 hammering church every day with all these kids and doing prayer every night and trying to squeeze this in and, being the best example here. And then when your children leave, it's like, oh, where's the foundation?
It's funny that you say that, because I've never considered it in that light. I have said that almost the exact same thing that you've said, but to the youth, right? I've said, look, next month you're going to college. Mom and dad aren't walking in the room on Sunday morning.
Right.
Alarm clocks, you can set it or you cannot set it. Totally up to you, right? This is all on you now. Are you going to be the person that gets up and goes? Or are you going to mail it in and take a few months off? Right? It's all up to you.
When your children, Tyler, right? When they leave home, you experience it. You will. So the foundation is there, right? And I never faltered, right? I knew why I needed to get up and go, but that was the thing, right? That popped into my mind.
It's interesting that you say that, because I never had thought about that before. Yeah.
So then the next step is, right, when you retire, right? When you are done working and the world says that you are no longer employable and you're at that retirement stage, then you have another decision to make, right? How are you going to spend and serve the remainder of that time that you have on earth?
Yeah. There's no high priest group to go take a nap in.
Yeah. Right.
That's out.
So there's these different stages in spiritual progression. I maybe it's not even spiritual progression, but there are situations and periods in your life where you will have to rely upon your testimony to keep going and keep progressing in the gospel, because there are definitely spots where it's a transition in the lifestyle that you could falter if you choose to.
That's a great point. I'd never had thought about that before.
Yeah, I've heard it broken down like so the life the life stages, right? You have order, disorder, reorder.
When is order again? Because I don't know if I've experienced that.
You're probably in a state of disorder, right? But that order is what Wes was saying, is all of the who am I, what is my part in this plan, what is the career, who do I hitch my wagon to, right? What is raising that family going to look like? Let's build the container that's going to hold this life, and then the kids come. The jobs, the ups and the downs, the layoffs, the disorder, and then that reorder, all aligned with the eternal truth and principles that you know in your heart. But order, disorder, and reorder, meaning in that last stage, life just looks different. Kids aren't in the house anymore, right? You still have that faith that you're hanging on to, that you had as a kid. Yeah. Right. But it's gone through, and it looks and maybe feels a little more rich, a little more tempered, right? A little more tried and tested. But I mean, I love that idea, because that disorder, we've all felt that, right? Life hits the blender. You think you've got it all figured out, and then it's like, oh yeah, boom. Right.
But you cannot relax. You cannot relax during the reorder. You can never relax during the reorder, because to me, the disorder, you were doing everything you were doing to instill that in your children. The reorder.
Right.
The reorder.
But along the way, every step along the way, Christ is there with his message, right? Come follow me.
Right.
Our adversary, the enemy of our souls, is there with other messages, right?
Right.
So when you're at that latter stage, how many times have we heard, you know what, Bishop, I've already served.
Yeah.
I've done my part.
Yeah.
Right. And the young man who's hustling is like, you know what, I'll serve after I make money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's all these different opportunities to put off those things that are going to help us be the best version of ourselves.
I think that goes back to that where we started this conversation at, right? Is this idea of progression. I think if we're true and we're committed to the idea of self-evaluation and self-reflection and improvement, self-improvement, I think that you can weather that storm a little bit easier.
Well, I'd even go back to your hypothetical you posed to me. I don't even know if we were recording before, but that castaway idea.
Yeah.
Right. Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ would have done all that he did for one.
Yeah. Right.
Would we, if it was just us, would we do all that we can?
Yeah.
With nobody watching, right?
Right.
Like to Wes's point, the house is empty, and now it's like, hey, are you still going to be who you just said you were for 18 years? You know, and I think that, of course, we know the right thing to do, but that's pretty pleasing to the carnal mind.
Right.
Hey, take your foot off the gas. You can slow down, man. But like, right? I've never been nobody's ever said Mike Freeman is a cyclist, but I know good cyclists pedal downhill.
You're a swimmer though.
I'm a swimmer, brother. I'm a swimmer. But right, when life is easy, that's when we make hay. That's when we actually push ourselves and press ourselves to go get that former self and beat him. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I think accountability, right, is it's huge, and it's an eternal principle. And I think that without it, then it becomes.
Well, the bottom line is this life will test your why.
Yeah.
It'll test your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? We started this episode talking about why be better, Tyler Gould.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm being better so I could be superior to other people, you'll fall.
Yeah. That goes back, like you said, it goes back to the castaway question. If it's just you, are you still pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself, or does it matter at that point? Right. And I think, hopefully the answer is that it matters, and we would all push ourselves. But
my mission president would always say, you know what, my role, my purpose in our time together is to teach you integrity, because one of these days you will be alone.
Yeah.
You won't have a companion with you all the time. You won't have somebody watching, right? One of these days you're going to be all by yourself, and will you live the gospel in that circumstance?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where it comes into that valiant. To me, that's valiant, right? Thomas S. Monson, serving in the military, Sunday morning. All right, boys, church is here. If you're Catholic, you go here. If you're Baptist, you go here, right? And everybody's peeling off. And he's like, hey, who are you? Right? And he's thinking he's alone. Turns out he's got a couple of other people. But he's like, I'm a Mormon, sir.
Well, the good news is we're lucky in that we have this community that we've stumbled upon, right? And with the richest men in town, and it's good to have people that will hold you accountable, and we're 30 something episodes in, and I feel like I've got 30 something accountability partners that are willing to hold me accountable. But Wes, let me ask you this question. When Mike says to you, hey, Wes, I've got this podcast and you'd be perfect for it, what goes through your mind?
It's about time. No.
It takes me a while, right? Like Tyler Gould says, I'm a hard nut to crack sometimes.
Yeah, I'm a slow
Gotta
study,
get
man.
hit over the head a couple times.
Yeah, and I think my initial thoughts were pretty much on par with what others have said, right? What would I be able to add? Who am I, right? Am I, how I've lived my life and situations, how can that be influential or beneficial, valuable to somebody else? And am I truly worthy?
Who am I? Come on, Wes Franks. You have no idea. You honestly have no idea. You have no idea how much you mean to a lot of people. And there are a lot of people who find hope from you, from the interaction that you have with them on a regular basis. I think you're one of the most mindful people. We talk about that, be where your body and mind in the same place. Wes, I mean, I watch you just from our close quarters and serving together, and you model that for me. And I'm grateful for your example. I remember where we were when I told you about when we started talking about this podcast and the possibility of you being a guest, because you were a fan, right? Yes. And we were talking about the show, and you were telling me, you were sharing with me some thoughts, and I said, hold up here. I'm getting a little vibe, Wes Franks, that you need to come on my podcast.
Well, I can say we're lucky to have you here, Wes. And
can I ask you really quick, Wes? Can I ask you about the shoes?
Yes. Okay. So I'll summarize it. When I started pharmaceuticals in 2001, my very first district manager, we went in the field, and he said, "Listen, in 3 months, I want to come back in the field with you." And he goes, every office we went into that day, he goes, "I want them to know your name and know who you are." And I thought, well, okay, well, that sounds pretty easy, right? I mean, I was new into the whole pharmaceutical industry. And after about 6 weeks, I realized it was a lot harder, right? Everybody wore a shirt and tie. Everybody was good looking, I mean, how am I going to set myself apart? There was a show by Craig T. Nelson called The District. And he was like a police commissioner. And certain episodes, it would just show him walking down the hall, but it would just show him walking with a pair of shoes. And I watched it one night, and he was wearing black and white wingtips. And I said, that's it. So I jumped on the internet. I ordered a pair. They arrived in a couple weeks, and I have worn those black and white wingtips since 2001.
That's awesome.
So I'm, when he showed up in the field, they didn't remember my name per se, but I am pretty much known for the guy with the shoes. I've been called Happy Feet, right? I've a lot of things, but I mean, there's people where I have visited their offices, and I haven't seen them in 10 years, and I could walk back in there and people go, "Oh, it's the guy with the shoes."
That reminds me, Tyler, of the quote that I shared with you in our text exchange today. This is from Esther Perel, and it's from Tim Ferriss's book, Tribe of Mentors, and says this: life will present you with unexpected opportunities, and you won't always know in advance which are the important moments. Above all, it's the quality of your relationships that will determine the quality of your life. Invest in your connections, even those that seem inconsequential, right? The idea of like, I'm going to wear these shoes so that people will make a connection with me. And it may be inconsequential, but everyone will remember the interaction that they have with Wes Franks. And Wes, I'm so appreciative of who you are. I'm appreciative. I have learned in this course of 33 episodes of The Richest Men in Town, I have learned that no man is here as a result of self, that we are a product of the people that we live with. And I appreciate the sentiment and the things that you have shared about your wife. I appreciate the shout out and remembering Rod Wilson. I love the things that you've shared with me about your kids. The more that I enjoy this being a dad, the more it teaches me of the pattern of heaven, that God loves all of his children. And in our time together, I've felt the love that you have for your children. I felt the love that you have for their spouses, for those that are married, and for those grandkids of yours. So thanks for just lifting up the hood, so to speak, right?
The hood that is now on someone else's driveway. But hey,
oh, I appreciate that so much.
Wes,
that's a low blow, brother.
Let me ask you this: we end every show the same way on the Richest Men in Town, and it's such a good experience to sit and listen to you and your experiences and see, be witness to your wonderful life. But what does it mean to you to be considered one of the richest men in town?
Yeah. And I can say I'm still working on that. I look at, I believe it goes back to, for me, my family, my health, testimony, love, compassion, empathy, selflessness, service, and gratitude. Those are the things that I'm still working on. That's why I say it's a work in progress, but I know that those are the things that bring me the joy and the happiness when everything is kind of in balance. So that to me is what I think is the richest man in town. I trust me, right? I set a goal because I used to study goal setting. So, I would listen to Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn. I worshiped it like the Bible. It was just, I just believed that you could write something down and you could get it done. So I wanted to be a millionaire, right? Because they said, just write it down and, it'll happen. And I just, right. So it's not the money, right? It's not. I have reflected so much recently. And I think the quote, I'm probably going to slaughter it, but right, President Eyring years ago, when he would write in his journal, he would say he would ask himself, how did I see the hand of God in my life today, or something on those sorts.
Right.
And very similar to President Nelson's council we had for 7 days of gratitude, right? President Nelson's statement of the situation in your life has little to do with the circumstances the joy one has in their life has little to do with the circumstances and everything to do with the focus, right? So when our focus is on God and the restoration and Jesus Christ and selflessness and serving others, that is where we find joy. Just to tie that back, Mike, to your question of how do you get through tough times, whether it's unemployment, it is that focus. It's that focus of trying to, and it's not easy because I live that, but it's removing the circumstance and being able to find the joy in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's where in the focus. I repeat that a lot because, our trials are never over. But I would say that's what it means to me to be the richest man in town. Is to seeing just to remembering God's hand also. Thanks for
sharing that, Wes. I feel I'm grateful tonight to spend time together, and I'm grateful that you're part of this town, and you may as well be the mayor, for crying out loud. But it was great, man. I really appreciate it. It was fun, and I've learned a lot, and I look forward to many more interactions down the road.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. Right? Mike, you probably don't even have a clue what you mean to me, right? When we talk about Mount Rushmores, buddy, you're there for me. You are.
No, I appreciate that. Wes, I just want you to know that when you speak, people listen. When you live, people watch. And so you keep doing it, right? I know the feeling. None of us are done. The cement's still wet for all of us, and it's important that we take some time every once in a while on a Thursday night and sit down with great folks like yourself. I've felt inspiration tonight. Like I've felt it like electricity. Like you ever lick one of those 9-volt batteries?
No. How'd that go?
That's how you've said some things. And in this exchange between the three of us, I've felt some things, and it's been electricity in the room, and it's been telling me some things that I need to be doing with my life. And so that's the game. That's what it's about. That's what keeps us coming back for more. So Wes, we tip our hats to you, man, and thank you for letting us in on the Sinister one, right?
Yeah.
Letting us in on the losses, letting us in on the highs and the lows, because that's the thing we love about this life. And we'll take it all when it's time to go.
Make sure you tell your family we said thank you. We appreciate the time. I know it's a sacrifice, but there's people that are gonna listen to this episode. And I'll tell you what, Wes, it's not just gonna be in Reading. It's all over the world. And they'll listen to this episode, and people will change their lives because of the things that you said tonight. And I believe that. It's happened over and over again. It'll happen again with this episode. And so for that, I am eternally grateful to you for your time and your sacrifice of your time tonight. So thank you, my friend. It's been a blast.
Yes. And happy to, virtually do this, maybe not in this forum, but to get together with you guys and just hang out. I mean, I love you both, just for being brothers, for what you stand for and what you're doing.
Well, we love you, man. We appreciate you. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Wes Franks.
Yeah. And we will be doing this again, right? Why not, Mike? We want everyone to come back.
Right.
Do this again.
Why not?
Thanks, Wes.
The reunion.
That's right. Yeah. We'll do it in person. Well, that'll be scary. All right, my friend.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.